guys, welcome back to my channel. So I'm here for my November releases video, and I feel like this is going to be a somewhat calm one compared to last month. I think publishers are like giving us a chance to read everything that came out recently, so like thank you publishers. But this is going to be a very like shortened version of what I normally do for releases videos because there aren't actually that many huge sequels or huge titles coming out, but there definitely are some that I just want to talk about that I think deserve a lot more hype than they've been getting. So without further ado, I'm going to mention the few sequels, big titles, and then I'm going to get into 5 titles that I'm just really excited for the world to get their hands on. So on November 6th, we get Arch Enemies, which is a sequel to Renegades by Marissa Meyer. Everybody loves Marissa Meyer. Not everybody loved Renegades though. I personally did. I'm very excited for this book. But November 6th is when we can get this one. We also have The Storyteller by Tracy Chee. This is the 3rd book in the, what is the series called? The Books of Sea of Ink and Gold? That's what the spine says for The Reader and the Speaker, which I think is one of the most underhyped like fantasy titles in the YA market, just saying. But that comes out on November 13th. And I guess I should mention a Brandon Sanderson title that's coming out. Skyward is coming on November 6th. I am sure that most of the world is very excited for this title. But that's kind of it. There are like some other sequels, but I'm just gonna move into titles that I really want to discuss for the month of November. So the first book that I want to talk about is Empress of All Seasons by Emiko Jean. I was actually fortunate enough to get my hands on an arc of this very early in the summer, and I've actually already like traded it on. This is a title that I think the world needs to know about. So this is set in a fantasy land where you have the opportunity to compete to become Empress of this kingdom. You can win the hand of the future emperor by making your way through the seasonal rooms that are in the palace. And in this book, we are following Mari, who has been kind of training her entire life to kind of infiltrate the kingdom. Like she wants to win this role and like overthrow the government from the inside out. But her little secret is that she's a yokai, which means she can transform into a beast. And yokai are not allowed to compete in this, obviously, because you would have the advantage, you know, turning into a beast, magical abilities and whatnot. So that's the basic plot line for the story, and I feel like it goes much further in depth with all of the characters as you progress through it, but the point that I wanted to make about this is I think that this book is perfect for fans of Studio Ghibli. I got so many Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke vibes while reading this. There are just a lot of little tiny things that are thrown in that are part of Japanese culture that just felt very Spirited Away to me, and I loved it. I love that kind of like whimsical feeling that they added to it. So if you're fans of any of the Studio Ghibli films, definitely check this out. It's gonna be right up your alley. This comes out on November 6th. November 6th is gonna be the date to watch. The next book that I want to talk about is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nang. So obviously I was also fortunate enough to get a copy of this, and guys, this book is so beautiful. Like, outside, inside, it's beautiful. This also officially releases on November 6th, so like I said, November 6th is the day you're like gonna get flooded with books. But this is also another Own Voices Japanese-inspired fantasy story, but very, very different. But this is set in a world where there are 3 different castes. There is Paper Caste, which is kind of like the lowly, low servant people who have no sort of powers. There is the Steel Caste, who has partial powers, as in they have some animalistic traits, like you might have a tail, you might have antlers. It can kind of come in varying different forms. And then there's the Moon Caste, which is like the top of the top, and these are like kind of beast animals who are kind of obviously the most powerful. They're like humanoid beast form people who are not pleasant, to be completely honest. I totally would want to be in the Steel Caste because I really just want antlers and a tail. That'd be pretty awesome. We are following Lei, or Lai, who is in the Paper Caste, which means she obviously is kind of more in the like servant caste of this world. But she was born with golden eyes, and she gets ripped away from her family because there is a commander in the army who is trying to redeem himself over something that he did to make the emperor unhappy by bringing her to the palace to become one of the Paper Girls. And these Paper Girls are girls that are selected every single year who are the most beautiful girls who have the potential to sleep with the king. So we do deal with some trigger warnings in here. There is a lot of content that deals with consent and rape and prostitution and things along that line. But the tagline of this book is what got me. It said, "In my land we're known as paper girls, easily torn, existing only for others to use and discard. But there's something they've all forgotten about paper. It can light the world on fire and make it burn." So We are following Lei as she kind of like stumbles through this like upper class that she has never been a part of and is just like infiltrating the palace from the inside, but it touches on so many amazing things. Guys, this book is amazing. I already can't wait for the second one to come out, and it's beautiful. Okay, November 6th. This is when this one comes out. Next book I want to talk about, I also have a copy of, but I have not read this one yet, so I can't give like a final verdict on it, but that is the Ren Hunts. It also comes out on November 6th. Like everything else does, but this is a book that I think I'm saving more towards like November Christmas time because this takes place at Christmas. So this is described as being for fans of The Raven Cycle and Wink Poppy Midnight. Yes. This is my book. So this book follows Ren, whose family comes from a long line known as augurs, who control powerful magic. And every Christmas she is chased through the woods near her home village by these judges. And these judges are the people who now control this magic, and they are hunting down the remaining augurs who controlled the magic prior to them. Obviously, they want all the power. So it says, in a desperate bid to save her family, she takes on a dangerous undercover assignment and tries to kind of like infiltrate from internal. That's a theme that's going on in this video. There's a lot of like infiltration from the inside of powerful government things, but in very different stories. So that's kind of the same type of story, but while she is undercover working with these judges, she kind of starts to like develop feelings for somebody that she probably shouldn't have feelings for, and she's at risk of getting caught the entire time. This just sounds awesome. This cover is stunning. It also comes out on November 6th, so I should probably get around to reading it. You're right. The next book that I want to talk about is 5 Feet Apart by Rachel Lippincott. This is a book that caught my eye early, I think in the springtime, from the cover, and it just sounds beautiful and touching and probably heartbreaking. This is gonna fall more in a darker contemporary vein versus all of the fantasy that I've been talking about. In this book we were following Stella, who has a very dangerous lung condition. I don't know if it's cystic fibrosis or something along those lines, but she basically is living her life kind of in a self-induced bubble where she is terrified of getting close to anybody that could potentially infect her or affect her lungs in some way and potentially remove her from the transplant list. She has spent her entire life in and out of the hospital trying to follow this rule of staying 6 feet away from other people to reduce the risk of any sort of contamination or infection. You're also following Will, who is staying in the same hospital as her, who his entire life goal is to get out of the hospital. I don't know what chronic disease he has, but he is almost 18, he can almost check himself out of the hospital and finally be done with being hooked up to machines and whatnot. But I believe that they end up meeting, and Stella starts to kind of push her own boundaries of the 6-foot rule to see if like 5 feet would be safe enough. But obviously they both can cross-contaminate each other, and it's gonna be a very risky thing, but I'm sure it's gonna turn into a adorable romance that I probably can't handle, and it's probably gonna be heartbreaking, and it's gonna be emotional, but I can't wait to get my hands on this. This is coming on November 20th, so like later on in the month, getting closer to the holiday season. Just in time to rip my heart out. The last book that I want to talk about is taking a very different turn, and that is This Splintered Silence by Kayla Olson. This comes out on November 13th, and this is gonna fall more in the like sci-fi horror genre that I can't seem to get enough of recently. I feel like there have just been some really awesome stories that have come out in this weird, terrifying space drama atmosphere. So in this book we're following Lindley, who is on a space station where all of the first generation of humans who have been with her this entire time, including the captain, her parents, blah blah blah, have been killed by this horrible disease. And she always kind of knew that she was being conditioned to one day take over the role of the space station's commander, I guess. But she didn't really expect to take it on so soon, so she is just trying to struggle through figuring out how to run this entire ship by herself. It's YA, let's be real, it's not gonna be super realistic. But then the second generation of people who are going to be like the next crew that are coming up also start dying from this disease that killed all of the first generation crew. And Lindley is starting to panic because this was supposed to have been cured and treated, and now she doesn't really know what's happening if one of her own is starting to cause everybody to get sick and murder people. Basically, it's gonna be one of those stories that has you at the edge of your seat the entire time that you're reading it, and it's probably gonna be let's be real, somewhat unrealistic, but it's gonna be enjoyable the entire time. So I love these stories. I can't get enough of them. So November 13th is when we're getting that one. So that is it for my releases video. It was a much shorter version. I'm sure everybody is either already done or making their way through Kingdom of Ash right now, or Muse of Nightmares. We just had so many huge titles come out in October. So November is gonna be a calmer, more chill month so that we can finally get caught up with reading. And I hope you guys are having an amazing fall so far. And that's gonna be it for this video. I will see you guys in my next one.